Discover the 3-minute surprising fix for creepy skin that transformed 1,000s of seniors' lives. The words danced across Martha's screen, bold and enticing, promising change. She sat at her kitchen table, sunlight filtering through the window, illuminating the creases on her hands. Martha, just age gracefully, she'd tell herself. But instead, she felt the familiar sting of inadequacy creeping in. Turning 65 had nudged her closer to a sinking feeling that she was becoming invisible. In her quaint Midwestern town, where all eyes turned to the bright, unblemished faces of youth, she felt like a forgotten book on a dusty shelf. The fear twisted in her gut. She watched her granddaughter, with smooth skin and boundless energy, light up envious smiles wherever she went. Martha craved that spark, a reminder of the girl who once sauntered through hallways, confident in her own beauty. "Why does it matter?" blared a voice from within, overlaying the joy of her familial support with a desperate need to retain relevance. Emily, her daughter, encouraged her to embrace her age, fiercely arguing that beauty lay beyond skin deep. Yet Martha struggled to find peace. Those philosophical discussions while sipping tea seemed hollow against the stark reality of her failing complexion. "Mom!" Emily huffed during another heated exchange, frustration etched on her brow. "You have to stop measuring your worth by wrinkles. Look at grandmother. She loved herself." It was a touching sentiment, yet every time Martha dared to glance in the mirror, she saw a stranger peering back. The thought floated in her mind. Was she truly beautiful in her own right? With each passing week, the desire to shed years hung like a heavy mist in her heart. What if this new routine is the answer? She pondered. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Frayed emotional threads had unspooled between her and Emily, each sharp word striking deeper than the last. Yet there was hope swaying just beyond her grasp. Each morning, she faced the mirror with the newfound regimen, skeptical yet desperate. A glimmer of hope emerged as she followed the steps diligently. Yet what began ostensibly as a skin improvement mission morphed into a deeper exploration of self-acceptance, a journey that began with apprehension and spiraled into fleeting sparks of joy. With each application, she could feel boldness breaking through her barriers, the heart-swallowing fears unfurling like spring leaves. But those fears licked her ankles in shadows, constantly whispering that it wouldn't be enough. What if it faded? What if she remained the same? The tension built as she began to document her changes online, revealing insecurities in the light of connection. Each post garnered encouraging comments, laughter intertwined with her vulnerability. Yet, it felt fragile, like a thin coating of paint over crumbling plaster. Could she truly shift her self-image? Martha felt a tightening in her chest. She was stepping towards a threshold, a chance to break through. As she prepared to share her journey at the community center, a sudden knock echoed, startling her. Anxiety flared. Would it shatter the little courage she had just grasped? That knock, that reckless interruption, hinted at unwelcome secrets threatening to unravel everything she thought about beauty, family, and herself. Martha's heart raced at the sound. She stood frozen, staring at the door as if it might reveal everything she was avoiding. The confidence she had cultivated with each morning routine began to wither. She could picture the world outside, each tick of the clock blending into a pulse of doubt. Who was it? Did they know of her struggles? Was this a reminder of her age or an invitation to something beyond herself? With a deliberate breath, she opened the door, revealing a frail but vibrant woman in her early 70s. It was Mrs. Henderson, her neighbor from a few doors down. The vibrant patterns of Mrs. Henderson's dress seemed to contrast sharply with Martha's muted emotions, as if she were a vibrant character in an otherwise grim narrative. "Martha, dear, I heard about your new skincare routine from Emily. I had to see for myself," Mrs. Henderson exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with delight. The warmth of her presence ignited a flicker of excitement, yet it was quickly tempered by the gnawing self-doubt creeping back. "Oh, it's nothing really," Martha mumbled, struggling to find her voice past the weight of her own perception. "Just trying something out." "That's the spirit. You know, I tried a regimen like that last summer, and it did wonders for me." Mrs. Henderson stepped closer, her gaze direct. "But I also learned that taking care of ourselves goes beyond skin deep. It really is about embracing who we are, wrinkles and all." Martha felt the flicker of hope extinguish momentarily, feeling the sting of her own insecurities surface again. She had expected support, yet Mrs. Henderson's words felt like both encouragement and a challenge. Was she ready to embrace more than external beauty? "Are you still painting? I remember how beautiful your landscapes were," Mrs. Henderson asked, redirecting the conversation gently. Martha felt her heart flutter, recalling her easel gathering dust in the corner of her living room. The vibrant colors she once splashed onto canvas had faded from her life, dimming along with her spirit. "I haven't painted in years," she confessed, her voice lacking the vigor it once held. "I just don't have the time anymore." "Time is what you make of it. You should pick up that brush again," Mrs. Henderson said, her tone compelling. "Creativity flows freely once you decide to make space for it. Trust me, it can be revitalizing." The idea swirled in her mind like a tantalizing brushstroke waiting to be laid down. She had always found solace in painting, as if it were an extension of herself that had slowly frayed at the edges. Perhaps rediscovering her talent could lend her the boldness she sought beyond merely restoring her youthful appearance. As Mrs. Henderson departed, her spirit lingered in the air, stirring within Martha the forgotten dreams and passions that lay dormant. She had spent so long agonizing over her appearance that hidden talents had faded into the background of her life. Martha stood at the window, contemplating the conversation she just had. Could she confront her insecurities about both her skin and her artistic identity? Deciding to stretch her boundaries, she opened her laptop once more and flipped through the photos documenting her skincare journey, the smiles, the comments, and the connections she made. With an inspired breath, she resolved to start a new post, one not only about her skin, but about her awakening creative spirit. As she poised her fingers to type, a new knock echoed through her home. A different sound, almost daring, a knock that brought back her fears of vulnerability. But this time, the door to her world was not merely an exit, it was an entrance to something larger. Martha's heart thumped, measuring the dual territories of terror and exhilaration unfolding within her. She stepped towards the door, feeling an unexpected resolve building within her. What if this knock signified a chance to share not just her insecurities, but her blossoming self-discovery? God help her, she was ready to find out. Martha paused, her hand hovering over the doorknob, uncertain. The knock had echoed, a loud reminder of everything she felt unprepared to face. Imagining the possibilities on the other side sent a rush of anxiety through her. What if this was yet another opportunity tangled in judgment or an expectation of perfection? Her heart pounded in rhythm with her uncertainty. With a deep breath, she twisted the knob and pulled the door open. A familiar face greeted her, not someone she had expected, but a representative from a local art collective, Maxine, whom she hadn't seen in years. The moment their eyes met, shadows of past conversations flickered through her mind. Art had once held her captive in a passionate embrace. Now it seemed an old friend shunned by neglect. "Martha, I heard you've been getting back into your art," Maxine exclaimed, her enthusiasm genuine, and it cut through a sliver of Martha's trepidation. "I'd love to see your work. We have an opening next month." Martha's stomach twisted. She was envisioning a gallery filled with vibrant, fresh artwork, visions of beauty that revealed themselves through hard work and discipline. "I haven't painted in ages," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not sure I can even create anything worthy of the space." Maxine's smile faded slightly, and for a moment, disappointment flickered in her eyes. "Martha, everyone has to start somewhere. Don't think of it like that. Your voice is valid, and it's time to share it with the world again. Think of what you could communicate." The weight of those words pressed down on Martha, forcing her to confront her fears head-on. If she couldn't be brave enough to express herself, how could she expect anyone else to accept her? Reflecting on Mrs. Henderson's words moments before, she realized how far she had wandered from her true self. "What if I'm not good enough?" she blurted, apprehension clawing at her thoughts. The fear of judgment erupted within her, tangling her aspirations in a web of insecurity. Maxine's eyes softened with understanding, her own experiences illuminating the darkness. "We all feel that way at times, but art isn't about perfection. It's truth. It's an adventure, and sometimes you discover more about yourself than you ever intended." Martha felt a stir within her, a faint pulse of courage mixed with apprehension. It wasn't merely a brush in hand. It represented a chance to redefine her narrative, a chance to challenge the judgments she felt trapped by. The passage of years weighed heavily on her shoulders, but within that weight rested the accumulated wisdom of experience. "I'll think about it," she finally said, her voice steadier than before. The tiniest ember of resolve sparked within her. Encouraged, Maxine leaned in slightly, her voice lowering conspiratorially. "You might also consider sharing your skincare journey alongside your art. People love hearing about transformation, both internal and external. It could really resonate." As the words settled in the air, Martha's mind buzzed with potential. She could blend her passions, linking her renewed interest in art with the fearlessness she sought to embody in her life. This could redefine what she shared and how she shared it. A synergy could emerge, an invitation for others to embrace their complexities. After saying goodbye to Maxine, Martha sat on her couch, flickering between inspiration and fear. There was a delicate balance between her artistic rebirth and the vulnerability she had always shied away from. As she reached for her laptop again, she realized that the next post in her series might need to be a raw reflection on both beauty and creativity in their intertwined journeys. Yet, as she began to type, something in the back of her mind whispered that these attempts at growth would only begin to peel back layers of hard-earned scars. What remained would require more bravery, and perhaps a confrontation with aspects of herself she hadn't faced in years. Determined yet hesitant, Martha resolved to pick up her paintbrush again and fully embrace each stroke. But with her heart racing at the thought, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that deeper revelations awaited her. A confrontation with her own insecurities was looming on the horizon, and as her fingers hovered over the keyboard, poised for a leap into the unknown, the weight of the decisions before her became crystal clear. Was she truly prepared to face whatever vulnerability was about to unfold? Martha closed her laptop slowly, the glow of the screen a fading reminder of both inspiration and hesitation. Her heart raced, not only from the prospect of returning to painting, but also from the intertwining of her artistic and personal narratives. The words Maxine had spoken lingered in her thoughts, reverberating with a mix of hope and anxiety. The fear of inadequacy loomed like a specter. Her past choices and failures whispered a certainty that had long dictated her reality. Art isn't about perfection. It's truth, she repeated to herself, each word a stepping stone toward a potential breakthrough. How simple yet profound it seemed, yet executing that philosophy felt daunting. What if her truth was insufficient? What could she reveal that hadn't already been exposed in the vulnerability of the past? The flicker of her resolve guided her to the corner of her living room, where her neglected canvas loomed against the wall, waiting. Dust specked its surface like the worries that cluttered her mind. Martha approached cautiously, the rich texture of the canvas igniting a familiar spark within her. It was there that she would explore her insecurities through art. As she arranged her paints, her thoughts coalesced into a plan. She envisioned a series encapsulating both her artistic evolution and her journey in skincare, a duality that had shaped her identity. Each piece could represent a facet of who she was: the struggles with self-image, the perseverance through doubt, and the ultimate creative expression. But to truly cement this idea, she had to confront her feelings directly. Martha sat down close to the canvas and began sketching. The first stroke echoed the uncertainty she felt. The second captured her longing for authenticity. Each mark was a dialogue with herself, a confrontation with the insecurities that had held her captive for so long. It was messy, revealing, but she began to feel a release unfold. The creative process became a mirror. She couldn't hide from her failures or reservations. With every brushstroke, she grappled with her self-judgment. What if she painted something that reflected her vulnerabilities but revealed, instead, their beauty? She envisioned a piece, raw and expressive, showcasing a figure intertwined with nature, flaws laid bare, yet surrounded by blooming life. Hours melted away, and the sun began to dip below the horizon. Exhaustion tugged at her, yet also a newfound empowerment flourished within. Martha took a step back, eyes locking on her emerging creation. The layers of paint depicted fragility and resilience, illustrating her journey in a new light. In that moment, the thought of integrating her skincare journey felt far more feasible. The fusion would give voice to so many others battling similar insecurities. They could witness not simply a recount of what had been, but an illustration of what could become, not just with skin, but within the much-desired authenticity of self-expression. Yet, as she placed the brush down, a sudden anxiety surged through her again, the fear of revealing her work to others. Would it resonate? Would critics dismiss the duality of her experience? As the shadows in the room grew, so did the weight of her vulnerability. She thought of Maxine's challenge. Think of what you could communicate. Taking a deep breath, Martha resolved to share her artistic expressions online, exposing her evolution. It would not just be about the art, but a documentary of vulnerability wrapped in beauty, revealing a truth she yearned to embrace. The flicker of resolve ignited into a flame of determination, but her heart quaked at what lay ahead. In the depths of her reflection, the nagging thought persisted. What if the opportunity to share her story diverted back to judgment, igniting her fears further? And yet, this was no longer just about her. It was about the message she carried. The question formed unbidden, pressing against her heart with urgency. Was she ready to share not just her art, but the story of who she had become, scars and all, in the light of vulnerability she was beginning to embrace? The moment to release her creative truth was nearing, and as she pondered her next steps, one burning thought pierced through her hesitations. Would her journey finally lead her to the acceptance she sought, or was she merely at the precipice of a deeper revelation, ready to confront the world for the first time? Martha sat in her living room, the canvases strewn around her reflecting both chaos and creativity. She had committed herself to a new dawn, where every brushstroke was a declaration of her reinvention. Yet, as she gathered her supplies for the next painting, a knot twisted in her stomach. What would her friends, family, or even strangers think? The challenge of vulnerability loomed larger than the canvas itself. In a moment of impulse, she reached for her phone, scrolling through social media, an endless stream of curated perfection. Pictures of flawless skin, smiling faces, and perfectly staged lives filled her screen. A pang of envy shot through her. How could she, a woman still shackled by self-esteem issues, dare to enter this world? But then, just behind the fear, a flicker of determination sparked anew. She understood that the very truth she sought to express with her art resonated within this medium as well. Martha dropped the phone, a sudden thought racing through her mind. What if she took a different approach? What if she documented her journey not just through painting, but also by sharing the behind-the-scenes struggle? Perhaps raw honesty, her trials with art and skincare, could pave a new path. The spark of inspiration turned into a direction, transforming her fear into focus. She envisioned a blog that would accompany her artwork, a space where she could narrate her story, doubts, and all. At that moment, she resolved to create a post about her current piece. The intention was to unveil her process, the conflicting emotions tangled with her aspirations. Biting her lip, she grabbed her laptop and opened a new document. The words flowed easily, transforming her raw thoughts into a narrative that mirrored her art. A blend of personal anecdotes and reflections on her artistic endeavor began to take shape. This was not merely about the aesthetics, but the exploration of self through struggle. With each word she typed, she felt the weight of her vulnerability dissipate. It dawned on her that sharing this journey might not just empower herself, it could also resonate with those who felt similarly trapped in their insecurities. The fears she faced were universal, and perhaps her story could act as a bridge for others to embrace their imperfections. However, as she clicked save, a new wave of apprehension flooded in. What if sharing this opened the floodgates to judgment? What if criticism stung too deeply? Martha chewed on her nails, her heart a chaotic rhythm. Yet, the thought of retreating to the shadows felt unbearable. The possibility of connection gnawed at her instincts. Drawing a deep breath, she recalled her last completed work. The layers of paint embodied a journey that was intricate, vulnerable, and yet utterly beautiful in its authenticity. She needed to believe that this writing could echo that same truth. Martha spent the next few hours intricately weaving together the story of her artistic and skincare journey, each sentence painstakingly interlaced with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. The blog post was set to be her inaugural leap into sharing her truth, her narrative. As the hours melted into night, a new question tugged at her consciousness. Could she truly revel in this authenticity? Was she prepared for the potential backlash, as well as the acceptance that might follow? The discomfort of uncertainty tightened its grip, but an unexpected resolve nestled within it. The night before her post was to go live, standing in front of her almost finished canvas, she could feel the air hum with possibility. The world awaited her first steps into this raw authenticity. And then, just as her heart began to settle, a notification popped up on her phone. It was a message from Maxine asking her if she was ready for the upcoming art critique session tomorrow. Suddenly, the fear of exposure shifted to a new realization. Would she now face not just her online audience, but also seasoned artists who might dissect her work? Martha's heart raced as she pondered the implications. Would this be the showdown she needed to validate her journey, or would it reveal the cracks that still needed mending? In that moment, the weight of her decisions loomed larger than ever, and she sensed a turning point unfolding just ahead. The sun crept into Martha's room, spilling light across the myriad canvases waiting for her attention. Each brushstroke she had envisioned now sat uncompleted, a multitude of thoughts racing through her mind. She could no longer ignore the looming art critique session scheduled for the afternoon. It felt like an impending exam, the stakes impossibly high. With her blog post ready to go live, her inner dialogue became a cacophony of anxiety and resolve. As she stood before her scattering of work, she recalled the raw honesty she had crafted in her writing. What if this critique could serve the same purpose? It could unravel both fear and insecurity, an opportunity to face the very thing she had been documenting. After all, presenting her art to seasoned artists was akin to presenting her most intimate thoughts to a room full of strangers, both terrifying and exhilarating. Determination surged within her as she disentangled herself from the safety of her chair. The time had come to enter the arena, not as a timid participant, but as an artist eager to embrace critique. She grabbed her paintbrush and began to work, layering paint onto the canvas, a physical manifestation of her intent to merge her artistic vision with her experience of vulnerability. Each stroke became a meditation, drawing her deeper into her emotional landscape. Colors aligned in ways that spoke to her insecurities, and in their vibrancy, she discovered her strength. This piece, now imbued with fragments of her journey, felt like both a shield and a beacon of authenticity. A fierce pride welled within her. Facing the critique would require a level of emotional transparency, yet perhaps it was necessary for her growth. With her canvas drying, Martha pulled out her laptop once again. This time, she decided to update her blog, sharing the behind-the-scenes of her new painting, detailing her nerves about the upcoming critique. She wrote about the intertwining of her journey and the need to step into the light. In doing so, she felt each word reinforce her resolve. As she hit publish, she permitted herself a moment to breathe, feeling the echoes of her choices dissolve in the aftermath of her creation. But as the clock ticked closer to the critique, doubt lingered like an unwelcome shadow. What if they saw her flaws instead of her artistic vision? What if their opinions shattered the foundation she had been painstakingly building? Arriving at the studio where the critique would unfold, Martha found her thoughts churning. The atmosphere buzzed with the energy of critiquing artists, each discussion animated, every opinion sharp. As she stepped through the door, the fear surged, but it bore an unexpected companion: anticipation. She hesitated at the threshold, surveying familiar faces intermixed with strangers, all experts in their fields. Standing there, she suddenly felt the weight of the moment amplify. Her art, her journey, laid bare for scrutiny. Would they see the authenticity she poured into her work, or simply the insecurities that she fought to overcome? She inhaled deeply, absorbing the vibrant chaos of the moment. What did it mean to be judged, and how could it mean affirmation instead of condemnation? Maybe, just maybe, this critique would not only unveil her vulnerabilities, but also affirm her transformation. Are you ready? Maxine's voice broke through the bubble of her thoughts, encouraging yet resolute. Martha squared her shoulders, embracing the tidal wave of emotions tumultuously swirling within her. The moment had arrived, the challenge now tangible and unavoidable. She could no longer dwell in her head. The studio awaited, and her brushstrokes hung precariously between acceptance and rejection. But just as she gathered her courage to step forward, a curious thought slipped through her mind. Would her journey of self-discovery begin again as she entered this new level of vulnerability? The stakes felt higher than they ever had, and she could almost hear the whisper of possibility igniting behind her fear. Would this experience deepen her understanding of art and herself, or would it push her away from everything she had fought to embrace? The anticipation coiled again, and without realizing it, a mantra began to form within her. Well, here goes nothing. With these words echoing in her heart, she stepped into the room, knowing the challenge of acceptance awaited her on the other side. As Martha crossed the threshold, an electric atmosphere enveloped her, a mix of anticipation and anxiety that clamored for attention. The room was filled with chatter, punctuating the air like fireworks, drawing her into a whirlwind of artistic discussion. She spotted the panel, composed of established artists with discerning gazes, and felt her heartbeat quicken. Each face seemed a battleground of expertise and critique, a jury poised to evaluate her journey. Taking a few intentional breaths, she focused on the canvas that stood among the other displays, her very heart laid out in vibrant hues. Recognition settled within her. This wasn't just a critique, it was a revelation of self. Yet, underlying that recognition was a gnawing worry, a dark undercurrent of apprehension that whispered, "What if they don't see you?" Maxine's encouraging nod prompted Martha to step forward, to occupy the space she had shied from for so long. As she positioned herself before the panel, her mind ricocheted between pride and trepidation. She was simultaneously the artist and the observer, acutely aware of every twitch of her peers, every subtle expression as they scrutinized the details of her labor. "Tell us about your piece," one of the critics prompted. Martha swallowed hard, knowing her voice would reveal just as much as her art. "This painting represents my journey through vulnerability," she began, her tone trembling slightly. Each layer echoes a part of my experience, my insecurities, the nuances of striving to be authentic. Her honesty hung in the air, sparking an unexpected connection. She could see a flicker of engagement among the critics, but a rush of anxiety drowned her articulated intent. Was she exposing too much? Would they twist her words into raucous judgments instead of understanding? As they asked questions, some probing, others kind, Martha grappled not just with her responses, but with the realization that every critique was an insight into her deeper self. They highlighted elements she hadn't even considered, encouraging her to articulate thoughts she had trapped within her own creative processes. With each interaction, she discovered hidden competencies. Her ability to communicate her art became a vital instrument of self-awareness. With every challenge came a chance to refine her vision. The critics' feedback was not just assessment, but a conversation, a dialogue of growth that offered alternatives and perspectives that resonated with her knowledge, but also introduced concepts she hadn't conceived before. One critic suggested a new technique involving texture, something Martha had hesitated to explore. Another invited her to draw upon her emotional MVP, her past failures, as a source of strength rather than shame. These suggestions felt like weights being lifted, revealing parts of her she was eager to explore. What could happen if she embraced this new direction? The question challenged every preconceived limitation she'd set for herself. But what if I fail? She found herself wondering again, caught between trepidation and emerging ambition. Yet deeper within her echoes a counterpoint, a mantra of acceptance. What if this is just the beginning? As the session drew to a close, Martha felt not only a renewal of her commitment to her art, but also a tangible shift in her identity as an artist. She had shared her vulnerabilities and embraced the ensuing judgments, transforming fear into opportunity. The experience was not merely about acceptance. It was about the boldness to sculpt her artistic narrative around vulnerability. "Thank you for your bravery," one critic finally said, and in that moment, Martha understood. Her journey wasn't defined by the opinions of others, but by her unwavering resolve to reflect, to adapt, and to create. Now, as she stepped away from the panel, each criticism resonating in her mind, another thought began to emerge. How would she channel this newfound understanding into her next project? What unsung aspects of her experience still awaited expression? With fresh canvases awaiting, a spark ignited, a visceral call to explore and redefine her artistic boundaries. Would she dare to venture deeper into the shadows of her experiences, translating them anew on her surfaces? As Martha left the panel room, the sounds of laughter and chatter faded into a distant hum. A tension within her began to unravel, replaced by a sense of urgency. Every comment from the critics echoed hauntingly, nudging her toward a reckoning she could no longer ignore. She had laid bare her vulnerabilities, and now the canvas of her life awaited a new, daring stroke. Back in her small studio, she leaned against the cool wall, glancing at the empty canvases scattered around. The blank surfaces beckoned, promising an exploration of her inner landscape. The urge to experiment built up like steam in a pressure cooker. Her mind raced with the possibilities of color and technique. Texture. The word drifted back to her from the critics' applause, stirring something deep inside. What would it look like if she embodied that idea? The thought ignited a sense of experimentation that bypassed her usual hesitations. She grabbed her palette and began combining pigments with vivid intent. Driven by a mixture of anxiety and exhilaration, she started to layer paint, allowing her hands to guide her imagination. As colors collided on the canvas, she felt a liberation she hadn't encountered before. Each stroke released another fragment of her past that she had long suppressed. Memories of childhood, of joyous afternoons and painful afternoons, blended into a visual dialogue, a tumultuous exchange of emotions wrought in paint. Hours melted away in this sanctuary of creation, each stroke defying the confines she had imposed. Yet amidst the flow, doubt would creep back in, whispering furtively from the shadowy corners of her mind. Are you really an artist, or are you just playing pretend? The questions pricked at her self-esteem, threatening to unravel the progress she had made in that room filled with critics. Stepping back, she examined the canvas. It felt raw, alive, but also disheveled, a reflection of the inner chaos that simmered beneath the surface. Could she really push out of her comfort zone and embrace this unpolished state? The thought of exposing such layered complexity to the world left her torn. With a sudden resolve, she picked up a brush dripping with deep red. It symbolized both her courage and her fears, bridging the gap between her earlier self and the artist she aspired to become. She added it to the chaotic mix of colors, letting it cascade across the canvas. Each movement was a declaration. Failure was no longer a looming monster. It transformed into a plot twist in her artistic narrative, an invitation rather than an exclusion. That night, surrounded by a fusion of messy brushstrokes and unveiled emotions, Martha sensed a shift. Could this be the catharsis she had yearned for? The realization burned brightly within her. Art was not merely a means of expression, but a canvas for her evolution. It was about journeying deeper into herself. But in that moment of clarity, another wave of uncertainty crashed inward. Would her audience accept this unrefined version of herself? Would they resonate with the sincerity of her emotional landscape? Or would they recoil from the vulnerability depicted on the canvas, just waiting to be revealed? Her heart raced with anticipation and fear as she pondered the answer. She needed another layer, another texture, another voice in this ongoing dialogue. What would that look like? The thought pulsed in her veins, inviting her to summon even greater depths from within. And so, as she looked at her creation, a nagging question lingered in the air. Was she ready to share this piece of herself with the world, knowing it could either soar or stumble at the hands of those who viewed it? As dawn broke and light flooded her workspace, an idea took form, fresh and insistent. She needed to take a bold step. Perhaps it was time to seek out more feedback, not from critics, but from people she deeply trusted. The journey of reinvention was only beginning. Would Martha gather the courage to reveal her layered truths to not just anyone, but to those who mattered most? Martha awoke to the soft light filtering in through her studio window, casting gentle shadows across the canvas. The urgency she felt the night before stirred within her, pushing her toward a decision that could alter the course of her artistic journey. With a deep breath, she grabbed her sketchbook, flipping through pages filled with fragmented thoughts and ideas. This collection of scattered inspiration was known only to her, offering a glimpse into her evolving psyche through words. She settled on a small couch, heart racing. The names she conjured in her mind, people she admired, friends whose judgment she cherished, anchored her as she considered who to involve in her art's metamorphosis. Each represented a beacon of trust and honesty, individuals who could offer perspectives that transcended her own internal chaos. As she penned names, a paradox emerged. Seeking confirmation felt empowering, yet it simultaneously opened doors to potential rejection. Martha couldn't afford to be naive, so she began crafting her approach. She called upon her longtime friend Lily, a graphic designer with a sharp eye, and Henry, an art historian who had provided insight during previous exhibitions. Well-versed in critique, they would surely wield their words like swords, cutting away the excess to reveal the unvarnished truth behind her expression. But was she ready for that transparency? Would she cower on the receiving end of their judgments, or would their criticisms forge a new strength? As she placed her phone down after sending out invitations for a casual gathering, uncertainty gnawed at her. Deep down, the potential for growth flickered brightly, yet fear of vulnerability flickered just as fiercely. The very essence of her art was at stake, leaving her to grapple with an unsettling question. Was she really prepared to share this raw narrative that abandoned traditional notions of beauty? With a jolt, Martha returned to the canvas. Instead of layers of paint, she envisioned layers of dialogue. What if the responses she received could inform her process, transforming criticism into constructive fuel? The idea sparked a fervor within her. She vowed to embrace feedback for what it was, not rejection, but an invitation to refine and deepen her voice. She spent the next hours furiously preparing for the gathering. Her dwelling transformed into a gallery, the walls adorned with her evolving body of work. This would not be a simple reveal. Rather, it was a sacred unveiling of her flaws and triumphs, allowing others to witness the vulnerability she had only danced around until now. As she arranged the space, frustration pushed her adrenaline, propelling her every move. Moments of doubt snagged at her sleeves. Could she maintain composure if their critiques pierced deeper than she anticipated? Martha knew she was teetering on the cusp of revelation and rejection. This was no longer merely about the paint. It was about her identity as an artist and an individual. Later that evening, she illuminated her studio with warm lights, displaying her canvases like treasures of her soul. When the doorbell rang, her heart thudded painfully in her chest. The moment hovered between anticipation and dread. When Lily and Henry entered, their expressions shifted across the spectrum from curiosity to a quiet reverence. Their presence felt both reassuring and terrifying, reminding Martha that she was not alone in this daunting plunge. Taking a deep breath, she gathered her courage, meeting the gem-like eyes of her peers. The discussions began, each layered with sincerity as they moved past polite conversation and straight into the heart of creation. What she didn't expect was the personal reflections that unfurled alongside their critiques, igniting moments of catharsis within the group. Together, they dug into the essence of her work, revealing truths about both the art and Martha herself. As the night progressed, revelations surfaced that would illuminate her path forward, allowing her to transcend the doubts that clawed at her. With every piece of feedback, she felt liberated instead of condemned, aware now that her journey was entangled with those she trusted. Just as she began to feel a budding sense of belonging, a shadow of uncertainty swept through her mind. Had she truly laid the groundwork for her transformation, or were the cracks beneath the surface still too shallow? Questions loomed thick in the air, as did the potential for a forthcoming revelation that could redefine her relationship with art forever. But amidst the collective spirit of support and exchange, one haunting thought remained. Would she brave the depths of honesty when it came time to reintroduce herself to the wider world? Martha stood in the early morning light, the room teeming with canvases, each narrating a unique element of her evolving story. The gathering with Lily and Henry had transformed her perspective overnight. What had once felt like an avalanche of critique now unfolded as a tapestry of opportunity. She had embraced their feedback, discovering within it not just constructive criticism, but permissions to delve deeper into the layers of her artistry. Week after week, she dedicated herself to the canvas with renewed vitality, each stroke becoming a declaration of authenticity. She explored boundaries, experimenting with textures that were once foreign to her vision. Layers of vibrant colors transcended the nuances of vulnerability she had initially wavered from sharing. The fear of exposure metamorphosed into an exhilarating challenge. Eager to share her work and her journey, Martha decided to initiate a local showcase entitled Beauty in the Unrefined. She envisioned the exhibition as more than an art display. It would serve as a dialogue, inviting others to confront their insecurities alongside her. She pictured the walls adorned with not only her work, but also pieces from local artists, each carrying their stories of vulnerability. Weeks of planning and preparation culminated in the opening night, and as she gazed at the exhibits, a wave of apprehensive anticipation washed over her. This was her moment, meticulously crafted to reveal not just her art, but her soul. The atmosphere crackled with energy, visitors mingled, laughter and conversation enveloping the space. "Can you believe she painted that?" whispered one attendee, excitement portrayed in her wide eyes. Martha caught snippets of admiration and curiosity, a distant echo of what once felt like fantasies. Her heart raced as she welcomed guests toward her corner of the gallery, Here stood her boldest creations, embodiments of her journey of reinvention, linked through the raw threads of vulnerability. As she conversed with viewers, sharing the stories behind each piece, she felt an inexplicable lightness wrap around her spirit. With every interaction, she shed remnants of self-doubt. The walls of judgment she had constructed seemed to crumble away in the face of honesty and acceptance. Attendees resonated with her exploration, many revealing their battles, mirroring her experiences with their own heartfelt narratives. Together, they forged a collective of individuality, as Martha proved that art could be a conduit for connection and healing. At one moment, a young woman approached, tears glimmering beneath the gallery lights. "Your work inspired me to embrace my own flaws," she confessed. "I've hidden behind my insecurities for too long, but seeing your journey, it's transformative." Martha felt a surge of pride and affirmation. This wasn't merely personal achievement. It represented the growth of an empowered community of individuals defying their insecurities. Martha had stepped out of the shadows, bravely allowing herself to be visible. Later that evening, after immersing herself in conversations filled with shared passions and revelations, a prominent local art critic approached her. "Martha, you've shifted the paradigm of how we view the artistry of vulnerability," she praised, putting into words what Martha had longed to hear. "It's not just about the finished pieces, it's about the stories and emotions each brushstroke conveys. Your courage to expose your imperfections sets a remarkable precedent." Those words tumbled over her heart, settling into her bones, the culmination of personal and professional conflict resolved in this critical acknowledgement. It was as if validation enveloped her, each compliment and reflection stitching the tapestry of her journey with purpose and clarity. Finally, as the closing of the event approached, Martha stood back and surveyed her surroundings, witnessing the rich dialogues and reflections playing out around her. A smile crept across her face. She felt seen, not just as an artist, but as a woman contributing to a larger narrative of acceptance, resilience, and personal achievement. The shift she had yearned for culminated here. She had conquered her fears and laid the groundwork for a future filled with possibility. She had risen above the sinking feeling of invisibility into a realm defined by recognition and connection. Empowered as an artist, she knew this was just the beginning, not solely for her, but for everyone who found inspiration through her journey. As the lights dimmed and guests began to depart, Martha felt an exhilarating tide of confidence course through her. She was not merely an observer in life any longer, she had become an advocate, an embodiment of transforming fear into artistic exploration. And in that moment, standing in her art-laden sanctuary, surrounded by portraits of her evolution, Martha understood the true language of growth and success. This was a narrative shared not just through canvas and color, but in an unrelenting commitment to embrace authenticity. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for more personal overcoming stories that matter. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others find their inspiration. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Comment below your reactions and theories about Martha's journey.